we are going to meet two, we call them our wizards. They are my colleagues. They are experts within visualization here at Tacton, and they will talk about how they see that visualization can help to further improve the customer experience, especially if you are configuring high variable products. So welcome Matthew Cummins and Marco Lang. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you, Susan. So what can you expect from today's presentation, Matthew, and my presentation? We basically like to answer three different questions, or tackle three different questions. The first one is, why should you actually extend the customer experience of CPQ into 3 dimensions? The second question we like to look at is, how is 3D visualization related to your existing digitalization process? And the last question is, why will 3D visualization become even more critical in the future? So let me look in the first question, which is the why. Why should you extend the CPQ customer experience? And the most common argument that I hear why you should do that is typically the wow effect. And don't get me wrong, though, if your visualization is done well, it's absolutely a valid argument, but there's way more that visualization has to offer than the wow effect. And by the way, in this presentation, we are focusing on 3D visualization, meaning in contrast to visualization based on static 2D images. And we further like to divide 3D visualization in real-time and CAD-based visualization. That might change in the future, we don't know yet, but it's at least what we see and have and work with today. And you will be hearing more about the difference between those in the next part of the presentation. But now coming back to the original question and the fundamental values that 3D visualization is able to add, to bring. So when implementing a CPQ solution, there are common benefits and outcomes that everyone is looking for. For example, increase your conversion rate, increase the speed of the process, reduce errors and risks, increase the confidence in what's happening, increase the satisfaction with the sales process, and least but not least, enhance the overall experience of the sales process. And as a matter of fact, 3D visualization enhances the value of each of those outcomes even more. So the reason or the reasons why you should extend your CPQ customer experience with 3D visualization are the same reasons why you chose to invest in CPQ in the first place. So 3D visualization makes the whole sales process more transparent. It creates trust and credibility in all your sales channels. Seeing is obviously much faster than reading, so 3D visualization is able to provide instant feedback and helps shortening the sales cycle. And since we humans are very visual beings, 3D visualization makes it much easier for us to detect errors. I guess you all know the saying, something doesn't look right. So satisfaction, as another thing, depends a lot on your initial expectations. And as we heard, modern B2B experience are expected to be similar to well-known B2C experiences. So for a successful sales process, you have to meet your customers' expectations. And 3D real-time interactivity is much more similar to your natural real-life way of experiencing a product. So you are able to walk around, you can decide on your own from where to look at it, and it should not be predefined. And this allows adding a more personal touch to the whole experience and enables a more collaborative sales process that can even be shared with others. So 3D visualization stands for what you see is what you get. And with technologies like augmented reality, it's even possible to put the configuration in your real life context. And that creates alignment and confidence and simplifies the whole sales process. So to summarize the inherent benefits and values 3D visualization can offer beyond the wow factor, those values add to the most common reasons why you already are investing in CPQ. And this is why you should extend your CPQ experience with visualization, not only because of the wow effect, but to get even more out of your CPQ implementation. So let's look into the second topic for this presentation. Matthew.
Thank you, Marco. I love the way that you talk about visualization. And so I'm going to tackle the question about taking visualization and bringing it into the context of the digitalization process that we've been hearing about for the last couple of sessions. Niels, Maddie, Bernd all talked about digitalization, and I think that I'd like to start with the image that I chose as the backdrop here, because Tacton is a software company, we're a SaaS company. We like to talk about digitalization, but we serve manufacturers, and I'm grateful for that because manufacturing is hard. Digitalization is hard, but when I walk into a factory, one of the thoughts that goes through my mind is, it is amazing that we have been able to take this matter that comes from the stars, and use our technological processes in order to create the product. So the next time you walk into one of your factories, just take a moment, pause and say, we've already done something really hard. So this digitalization process, we may think of it as hard, but think of what we've already accomplished. Okay, so with that, let me kind of jump into my presentation and talk about this life cycle. So Maddie mentioned how sometimes digitalization has been broken into these sort of silos, and you're familiar with them, of course. Design, build, operate. But of course, because we're a CPQ company, sell is really, and traditionally, you design a product, you'd build it, you'd sell it, and then you'd operate it. But with CPQ, we kind of have to change the order, right? Because in the design phase, we create the possibility of millions of possible combinations, and we don't know what we're going to build, which variant we're going to build, until we've gone through the sell process. So when we think about the digitalization process in these terms, as Maddie mentioned, all of our customers are doing this. You've all been doing this for a long time. You're at different levels. But the process of taking real world into a digitalized format is not only done in all of these silos, but the digital thread that connects all of them together. And so the topic today, we're talking about visualization. And as Marco just said, traditionally here at Tacton, we've thought of that visualization in two different categories. We've thought about it as a visualization leveraging CAD tools, your CAD software tools, and then we've also thought of it in terms of our visualization technology that's a real-time, potentially browser-based experience that can help with the sell piece. And in all of those scenarios, we have to figure out, how are we handling not just one visualization, but any one of millions of variations across all of these phases. As if that's not enough, if we're going to be forward-looking, and the question right at the end of Bernd's session asked about the digital twin, I want to speak for a moment about how the digital twin fits into that visualization work that you're already doing. And I have a daughter who just started college. My wife went out this past weekend to visit her in Los Angeles, and at the rental car center, they gave her the option of renting a Tesla. And she'd never driven one, but she said, sure. She called me up shortly thereafter and said, this is crazy. There is no dashboard. I only have this iPad type thing. And as I'm driving down the road, when I come to a red light, I see a red light on my screen. When the light turns green, it changes to green. And the whole time, the center of the visualization is my car. When I turn right, I see my car turn right. When a truck pulls up next to me, I see a truck on the screen. So I thought the timing was quite interesting. I thought I'd use that to introduce this idea of the digital twin, because if we take this idea and draw some observations, first of all, a visualization that we historically have done in a silo in the design phase or the cell phase, for example, is static. It can be used for simulation, but it's just one instance, right? When it's connected to multiple streams of information and also connected to the real physical object, we have an entirely different ability to leverage the value, right? So a few of the key ideas are that you have this connection between the physical and the virtual. You have these bi-directional data streams. It's real-time data. And then you can also overlay modeling analytics and so forth. So you might even say that there are kind of 3 levels of maturity that you might aim for with these digital twins. The first is simply sort of asset monitoring. It's almost like having a historian who can provide all of the information of the history of your physical product, but also with a good UI, and that's where the visualization can really benefit us. If we then add what if modeling to that, we can take the real-time digital twin as it is providing us an accurate representation of what's actually happening now, and we can start to run what if scenarios in order to optimize both how it's operating and how we design in the future. And then third level is when we start to look at machine learning or AI and are able to have patterns be recognized that we're not even aware of. And I think that these 3 things, when you start to look at some of the other topics that Niels, Maddie, Bernd have talked about, like outcome-based selling, well, if you don't have a model of what is actually happening in the operate phase, it can be much harder to identify whether you're succeeding on those outcome-based metrics. And sustainability has also it's been mentioned a couple times already. It's a very important topic here at Tacton. And when we think about sustainability, there are topics in that AI pattern recognition that could enable, in the maintenance and the replacement of our products, a more pinpointed and surgical approach. So, for example, you might have in the historical way, you have a maintenance schedule, and you replace certain parts, at some point, because eventually they're going to fail. But there might still be a lot of good lifetime in them. And if instead you're using sensors to track the actual performance of that part, you can say, what? This might be a time when normally we would have replaced it, but clearly it's continuing to work well. So let's not replace it until later, which increases the sustainability because you're taking better advantage of the components that you have. So to kind of summarize this, but before I do, I wanted to throw in a slide. If you're interested in this, there are some phenomenal examples of digital twins out there. Not all in the manufacturing space, but very inspiring. And so there are digital twins in municipalities, things like water supplies and transportation systems, where there's this real-time representation of what's happening. Stadiums. I love examples in the human space, hearts and brains, Google digital twin human brain, fascinating things that are being done in the medical industry. Cities, NVIDIA is working with Earth's global climate. But let me bring it back. Let me bring it back to the topic of digitalization and visualization. If this is today the way that you think of visualization in your different phases, CAD maybe in the design process, visual tools in the sales process to help customers better understand what they are buying, drawings, shop floor drawings in the build phase, and maybe some type of maintenance visualizations for services. Think of it instead through the lens of a digital twin and what might be possible in the future, right? So so today in the design phase, you may be working with CAD models for the sake of design, but tomorrow these CAD models, especially with configuration technology and CAD automation, can create the underpinning for your future digital twin or for your customer's digital twin. And I can tell you there's a huge difference when you're a customer between seeing digital models or representations that are kind of close to your product because they're a standard catalog, and seeing something that is actually based on the configuration that you have purchased, right? When you think about the cell phase and think about the creation of these visual assets, think in the future about how these visual assets, again customized, can become the underpinnings of the operation digital twin. And through that process, become invaluable in some of those things that I mentioned, like the sustainability and the outcome-based selling. Today in the cell phase, hopefully you're recognizing that there's a lot of value in CAD automation in order to create those assets for both the build, shop floor drawings, assembly drawings, et cetera, and approval drawings for the customer at the time of the sale. But again, these are also going to become assets for the visual nature of your digital twins in the future. And again, taking those to the operate phase. So kind of in summary, when you're thinking about visualization, you can certainly think about it in the near term with respect to each of these phases or silos, and how the digitalization of each of these processes can benefit these particular areas. But I also encourage you and invite you to think of this as a way to prepare for the future, and ways that you can really leverage these. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Marco, and in addition to the digital twin, he's going to expand on some of the other ways, or maybe a particular way that visualization will be extremely valuable to you in the future.
Thank you, Matthew. So let's look into the last question of this presentation, which is why 3D visualization will become even more critical in the future. And something that will play a very important role in that future will most likely be the metaverse. And I guess most of you already heard about it, probably still wondering what is it and how does it really impact us? And unfortunately, there's no simple answer for that one. I guess we can all agree that it's not the latest Doctor Strange movie, because that was about the multiverse and not the metaverse. But the fundamental issue with the metaverse is that it does not exist yet. Maybe it will in 5 to 10 years. But because it does not exist yet, there is no definition yet available. And even if the metaverse would be already here, it would still be difficult. I mean, there's also no common two-sentence definition of what the internet is for that everyone can agree on, because it depends on from where you're looking at. So it's the same with the metaverse. There are so many different descriptions and definitions of the metaverse out there. For our presentation today, let me briefly present my current understanding of the metaverse and how this relates to today's topic. And a small disclaimer, because I daily learn new aspects of the metaverse, it's some kind of a moving target that we have here. But currently, I like to describe the metaverse by looking at a cube with 3 different dimensions. And each dimension describes a different aspect, a different domain of expertise that you might have when looking at the metaverse. So one of those dimensions is infrastructure. So talking about topics like the metaverse should be open for multiple use cases, for unlimited number of parallel users. It should be device agnostic. It should be open, interoperable. Artificial intelligence, IoT, all those technologies play an important role. And then you have, of course, the big tech stack of Web3, which is about blockchain and cryptocurrencies and NFTs. So this is all the infrastructure dimension of that cube. But let's keep that away for today because it's not so relevant for the presentation that we have that's ongoing at the moment. So I like to focus on the 2 other dimensions of that cube. And one of that is experience. So what kind of experience are you talking about? Is it textual based? Is it 2D image based or videos? Is it 3-dimensional or is it extended reality like AR or VR? And the last dimension is about talking about, is it completely happening in the digital space virtually, or is it a combination of the real world and the virtual world building some kind of an overlapping new omni-reality? And now adding a few examples to that cube. So a lot that you can read about today are companies that are more located in the upper left area or corner of that cube. It's about gaming and entertainment, social media, e-commerce, and retail. A lot is happening there. But there's also a lot happening on the upper right area of that cube. And these are companies that are more looking into bringing the design and build and operate phase of your product lifecycle into the metaverse, and combining that with the real world using digital twins and IoT. So you could roughly divide those in 2 parts. You have the more consumer-oriented part of the metaverse and the more industry-oriented part. And you can actually look at, if you look at the internet, what you see today, all the typical applications that we are using, they are more located, looking at that cube, they are more located in the lower left corner of that cube. So it's text-based, images, and videos. That's the majority of those applications. So that's basically the today's internet part of that cube. So that's, of course, a very high level and rough description of the metaverse. But 2 important observations that I like to point out that are relevant for this presentation. The first one is the metaverse is coming. So any big company you can think of is playing and investing into the metaverse, trying to create their own metaverse strategy. And the amount of money that is invested currently in there, it doesn't look like it's something that's going away in 1 or 2 years. It's here to stay. And the second observation that is important is that the metaverse will be 3-dimensional. That's the big difference to today's internet. So this is why people are talking about the metaverse as the 3D extension of today's internet. It will be 3-dimensional. So bringing those 2 observations to our product lifecycle, The first thing is that over time, the metaverse will blend over your product lifecycle as another layer. And it doesn't really matter if it will be the more industry-oriented or the more consumer-oriented part of the metaverse, and those things will shape themselves over time. The important thing is, if you want to stay competitive, there will be no way around the metaverse. It will become the next phase of your digitalization. And bringing in the second observation, the metaverse is expecting you to be three-dimensional. 3D visualization is one of the important keys to unlock the metaverse potential. So without 3D visualization, you cannot be part of that metaverse. So this is basically the answer why we think that 3D visualization will become even more critical for you in the future, because 3D visualization is a fundamental part of a future based on the metaverse. So let's wrap it up for today. Matthew.
Could I ask you to sort of handle the slides? Thank you. So just to sort of summarize the three questions, obviously, as Marco said, when you're thinking about 3 dimensions in, fundamentally with CPQ, the takeaway message is that all of the reasons why you're investing in CPQ in the first place are only further enhanced by visualization. And everything that CPQ enables in terms of the customer experience can be magnified and again enhanced, because I've seen data that says 50%, as much as 50% of our brain's processing power goes towards taking in and processing visual data. And so anything that we do in terms of CPQ, adding that ability to take advantage of that is perfect. Next point. And then so then we talked about how the digital twin can be kind of a guiding light or a lighthouse for how you might take all of the work that you're doing with visualization today, both on the CAD and the real-time graphics, and consider it as a way to tie together the digitalization process. And then the third, when you do get to the point where you have that digital twin, the metaverse will be an immersive way to interact with that digital twin and interact with these 3D visualizations. And so wherever you are today, in summary, consider how you can use 3D in the ways that you are set up for it today, either with CAD or with real-time graphics. And our job at Tacton, Marco and I and our teammates are going to be how we can help you do that in the future through the product offerings that we provide.